The church bell rang like a death knell. Luther May stood drunk on a wagon selling his own daughter like cattle. The crowd laughed until a giant in a buffalo coat slammed silver on the table and shouted words that split the frozen air. "Stop, I'll buy that girl." But what Kent McKenna did next, nobody saw it coming. Not the town, not the railroad men hunting her land, not even Khloe herself. Before you hear how one act of defiance changed everything, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels, and stay until the end. Because what happens next will break your heart, then rebuild it. The silver coins hit Murphy's table. Not scattered, not tossed, slammed. $500 in hard silver. Each coin rang against the wood like a bullet casing hitting stone. Every drunk in that saloon turned their head. Luther May froze mid-sentence whiskey bottle halfway to his lips, eyes going wide as dinner plates. Outside in the snow, Khloe May stood on the wagon bed in a dress 2 sizes too small. Her face buried in her hands, shoulders shaking with sobs, while 30 townspeople shouted bids like she was a plow horse. $2. $3 if she knows how to scrub. $1, look at her, she'll eat her weight in flour. The laughter cut worse than the cold, sharper than any blade. These were people she'd known her whole life. Mrs. Henderson, who used to pinch her cheeks at church. Mr. Carver, who'd bought eggs from her mother. Tommy Wright, who'd asked her to dance once before his friends made him regret it. Now they stood in the snow pointing at her body, laughing at her tears, making sport of her humiliation. Luther May grinned through broken teeth playing ringmaster to his own daughter's destruction. "Come on now, folks. Somebody's got to take her off my hands. She cooks, she cleans. She's got her mama's brains, even if she's got her grandmama's." "Stop!" The word cracked through the air like thunder. The laughter died. Luther's grin vanished. Every eye snapped toward the saloon door, where a mountain of a man stood backlit by the gray afternoon light, snow swirling around his boots. Kent McKenna, 6'5", 240 pounds of scarred muscle wrapped in a buffalo coat that made him look even bigger. His face was all hard angles and old wounds, a scar through his left eyebrow. Another along his jaw, a third that disappeared into his collar. His hands were massive, calloused, the kind of hands that could break a man's neck or cradle something fragile with equal ease. He hadn't been seen in Silver Creek for 6 months. Hadn't spoken to another soul in longer than that. Mountain men didn't come to town unless they had to. And Kent McKenna never came to town. He stepped through the saloon door, his gray eyes locked on Luther May, and walked straight to the gambling table, where Morrison, the trading post owner, sat counting his evening's take. Morrison looked up, annoyed. "McKenna, didn't know you were—" Kent swept the coins across the table. The cascade of silver silenced every conversation in the room. $500. Kent said, his voice low and dangerous. "I'm buying the girl." Morrison's jaw dropped. "You're... what?" "You heard me." Luther stumbled forward, nearly tripping over his own feet. "Now hold on, mister. I don't know if—" $500. Cash. Right now." Kent's eyes never left Luther's face. "You take it, and you walk away. Tonight. Forever. You don't speak to her. You don't look at her. You don't exist to her anymore." The saloon erupted in whispers. $500 for her. McKenna's gone mad. Mountain sickness finally got him. Luther's eyes went from the silver to Kent's face and back again. His hands shook, not from cold, from greed. I mean, she's my daughter. I can't just—" "Yes, you can." Kent leaned forward and his voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire room. "Because if you don't take this money right now, I'm going to walk outside, take her anyway, and you won't see a single coin. Your choice." Luther's face went white. The entire saloon held its breath. Morrison cleared his throat. "Luther, that's $500. That's more money than you've seen in your entire deal." Luther snatched the coins with both hands, stuffing them into his coat pockets like a squirrel hoarding nuts. She's yours. The fat cow's all yours." Kent's fist moved faster than anyone expected. The punch caught Luther square in the mouth, sending him sprawling backward over a chair, blood spraying from his split lip. The saloon gasped. Kent stood over him, shaking out his knuckles. "Call her that again and I'll break more than your face." Luther spat blood and stayed down, clutching his mouth, eyes wide with terror. Kent turned toward the door. "Wait!" Morrison called out. "You need a bill of sale documentation otherwise. I don't need papers to do what's right." Kent pushed through the door into the cold. Outside, the crowd had gone silent. 30 people stood frozen in the snow, staring as the mountain man emerged from the saloon. Khloe still stood on the wagon, trembling so hard she could barely breathe. She'd heard the commotion inside but couldn't see what happened. Couldn't understand what it meant. All she knew was someone had bought her. Another owner. Another prison. Kent walked through the crowd. They parted like water around a stone. He stopped at the wagon and looked up at her. Khloe's breath caught. She'd seen him before years ago when her mother was still alive. He'd come to trade furs, tall and quiet and intimidating. But this was different. His eyes weren't cruel, weren't hungry. They were sad. "Miss May," he said quietly, "can you climb down or do you need help? Miss May, not girl, not fat cow, not purchase. Miss May." Khloe's voice came out as a broken whisper. I can manage." She climbed down her legs, shaking so badly she nearly fell. Kent caught her elbow gently, carefully, and steadied her. Then he did something nobody expected. He unbuttoned his buffalo coat, the legendary coat that had survived 5 winters in the high country, worth more than most men's entire wardrobes, and draped it over her shoulders. The crowd murmured, "What's he doing? Is he protecting her? That coat's worth $200. Khloe stood frozen, drowning in the massive coat, staring up at Kent with complete confusion. "Why?" she whispered. Kent's voice was quiet enough that only she could hear. "Because nobody should be sold. Not ever." Tears spilled down her face. Kent looked at the crowd, his expression hard. "Anyone follows us, they answer to me." Nobody moved. He turned and walked toward the tree line where his horse waited. Khloe followed, stumbling through the snow, her mind reeling. Behind them, Luther May staggered out of the saloon, clutching his bleeding mouth, already shouting for Morrison to open a tab. The crowd watched them disappear into the forest. Mrs. Henderson clutched her shawl. "He's going to kill her." "No," Reverend Thomas said quietly, surprising everyone. "I don't think he is." "Then what's he doing?" The Reverend watched the tree line long after they'd vanished. "Something none of us had the courage to do." The ride up the mountain took 2 hours. Kent didn't speak, didn't explain. He just kept his horse steady, one arm loosely around Khloe's waist to keep her from sliding off, and guided them up a trail only he knew. Khloe's mind wouldn't stop racing. What does he want? What's the trap? Why buy me if not to use me? She'd heard stories. Every girl had. Trappers who took women into the mountains and kept them as slaves. Miners who bought wives and worked them to death. Men who disappeared into the wilderness with their property and were never questioned. She should run, should scream, should fight. But her body was too cold, too tired, too defeated. So she sat in front of him on that horse wrapped in his coat that smelled like pine smoke and leather, and waited for the truth to reveal itself. When they finally reached the cabin, Kent dismounted first and helped her down. Her legs were completely numb. She couldn't feel her toes. "Inside," he said, pushing the door open. The cabin was small, maybe 20 feet across. Stone fireplace, wooden table, shelves lined with traps and furs. One bed in the corner. One bed. Khloe's heart hammered against her ribs. Kent walked straight to the fireplace and started building a fire. His movements were quick, efficient, practiced. Within 2 minutes, flames crackled to life. "Sit," he said, nodding toward a chair. Khloe sat, slowly, watching his every move. Kent moved to a shelf and pulled down a tin plate, a chunk of bread, dried venison, and a jar of preserves. He set them on the table in front of her. "Eat." She stared at the food, then at him. "I don't understand." "You haven't eaten today. Maybe not yesterday either. Eat." "But what do you want from me?" Kent turned and looked at her, really looked. His gray eyes swept across her face, not her body, not with that hungry look she'd learned to recognize, but her face, her eyes, her expression. "Nothing you don't want to give." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting tonight." He walked to the far corner of the cabin and pulled aside a heavy curtain she hadn't noticed before. Behind it was a small space, a cot, a chest, a lantern, rough walls but private. "That's your room," Kent said. "It's not much, but it's yours. There's a lock on the inside of the curtain rod. You can use it whenever you want." Khloe's breath stopped. "You're giving me a room with a lock?" "Yes." "Why?" Kent's jaw tightened. "Because you're not a slave. You're not property. You're a human being who deserves privacy and dignity." The tears came before she could stop them. They poured down her face in hot streams, years of humiliation and pain and fear breaking open all at once. Kent turned away, giving her space. He walked to the door. "I'll be outside checking the horse. You eat. You rest. We'll talk more tomorrow." "Wait." Khloe's voice cracked. He stopped, hand on the door. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you really buy me?" Kent stood silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough, weighted with old pain. 15 years ago, I watched my sister sold to pay my father's gambling debts. I was 12. Too small to stop it. Too weak to save her." Khloe's hand went to her mouth. "Her name was Sarah. She was 16, pretty, kind. She used to braid my hair and tell me stories about knights and dragons." Kent's shoulders tensed. "They took her east, to a brothel in Chicago. I never saw her again." The cabin fell silent except for the crackle of flames. "I swore that if I ever saw it happen again, I'd stop it. No matter the cost, no matter what people thought." He opened the door, cold air rushing in. "So that's why, Miss May. That's the only why that matters." He stepped out into the snow and closed the door behind him. Khloe sat, frozen tears streaming down her face, staring at the food in front of her. For the first time in years, someone had seen her as a person. Not a burden, not a joke, not livestock, a person. She picked up the bread with shaking hands and took a bite. It was the best thing she'd ever tasted. Khloe didn't sleep that night. She ate everything Kent had given her. The bread, the venison, the preserves, and sat by the fire wrapped in his buffalo coat, trying to make sense of the impossible. He saved me. He actually saved me. The thought felt ridiculous. Men didn't do that. Men didn't spend fortunes to protect women they didn't know. Men didn't offer rooms with locks and call you miss, and walk away without demands. But he had. She stood and explored the cabin, careful not to make too much noise. The main room was sparse but clean, organized. There were books on a shelf, actual books worn from reading. A Bible. A journal with careful handwriting. Maps marked with trails and trap lines. On the mantel above the fireplace sat a small daguerreotype in a wooden frame. Khloe picked it up carefully. A young girl smiled back at her. Maybe 16. Dark hair, bright eyes. A hopeful expression that seemed impossible in this harsh world. "Sarah." Khloe's throat tightened. She set the picture down gently and looked around the cabin with new eyes. This wasn't the home of a monster. This was the home of a man carrying guilt like a physical weight. A man who'd run to the mountains to escape memories that followed him anyway. A man who'd been alone so long he'd forgotten how to be anything else. Until tonight. When Kent came back inside 2 hours later, stamping snow from his boots, Khloe was still sitting at the table. "You should be sleeping," he said quietly. I can't. He nodded and moved to the stove, adding wood to keep the fire going through the night. Khloe took a breath. Thank you. You already said that. I need to say it again. Thank you for saving me. Kent's hands paused on the stove door. You don't need to thank me for doing what's right. Yes, I do. Because nobody else did. Nobody else even tried. He turned and looked at her. His face was tired, lined with years of hard living, but his eyes were kind. What happens now? Khloe asked. You rest, you heal, you decide what you want to do next. And if I want to stay, then you stay. What would I do here? Kent sat down across from her, his big hands folded on the table. Whatever you want. This cabin could use work. Mending, cleaning, cooking. But that's not why you'd stay. You'd stay because it's safe. Because nobody can hurt you here. What about you? What about me? Why do you live up here alone? Kent looked into the fire. Because people are cruel. The war made them crueler. I got tired of watching it. The war? Civil War. I fought for the Union. Saw things that... He trailed off, jaw tight. When it ended, I came west. Figured the mountains would be quieter than people. Are they? Usually. He almost smiled. Until tonight. Khloe wrapped the buffalo coat tighter around herself. I can cook, I can clean, I can mend clothes, I can read and write and do figures. My mother was a school teacher. She made sure I could do all of it. Kent's eyebrows rose. Your father never mentioned that. My father never mentioned anything that made me valuable. He only saw the weight I'd gained after Mama died. The way I looked. The shame I brought him. Her voice hardened. He never mentioned that I ran the household after she passed. That I kept the books. That I was the reason we didn't starve those first 2 years. Why did you gain weight? The question wasn't cruel, just curious. Khloe looked down. Grief. And I'd eat when I was scared. When he came home drunk and angry. When he said things that hurt worse than hitting. Food was the only thing I could control. Kent nodded slowly. My sister used to hide under the porch when our father drank. Said it was the only place she felt safe. They sat in silence, two wounded people recognizing each other's scars. You don't have to earn your place here, Miss May, Kent finally said. But if you want to help, I won't stop you. Khloe smiled, small, hesitant, but real. Then I'll start tomorrow. Good. Kent stood. Now sleep. Real sleep. You're safe here. He walked to his bed in the corner and lay down fully clothed, turning to face the wall. Khloe retreated to her small curtained room. She pulled the curtain closed, tested the lock it worked, and lay down on the cot. For the first time in months, she slept without nightmares. Morning came with the smell of coffee. Khloe woke disoriented, forgetting where she was. Panic rising. Then she remembered. The cabin. Kent. Safety. She pushed the curtain aside and found Kent at the stove frying eggs and salt pork in a cast-iron skillet. He glanced at her. Morning. Good morning. Sleep. Yes. Actually, yes. Good. Sit. Eat. They ate in comfortable silence. Not awkward, not forced, just two people sharing a meal. When the plates were empty, Kent leaned back in his chair and studied her face. I need to know your full situation. Your father's debts. Who he owed. Why he was really selling you. Khloe's hands tightened around her coffee mug. It's complicated. I've got time. She took a breath. My mother left me land, 40 acres east of town. It's not much rocky soil, steep hills, but it has Thunder Spring. Kent's eyes sharpened. The spring that never runs dry. Yes, it's the only permanent water source in the valley. Every other creek and well dries up by August, But Thunder Spring flows year-round, cold, clean, endless. And the railroad wants it. It wasn't a question. Khloe nodded. They've been buying up land for 3 years, building a rail line through the valley, but they need water for the steam engines. Thunder Spring is the only source that can handle their needs. They tried to buy it from your mother. For 2 years, she refused every offer, said the land was my inheritance, my future. Khloe's voice cracked. When she died last year, the deed passed to me, but I was 17, still a minor. My father had control until I turned 18. When was that? 3 months ago. Kent's jaw tightened. So the deed's legally yours now? Yes, completely. My mother made sure of it. She had Reverend Thomas witness the will. Had it filed with the county. Everything legal and proper. And your father tried to sell it anyway. He tried. But I wouldn't sign. The railroad offered him $5,000 to convince me. He tried threats, manipulation, locking me in the cellar without food. Her hands shook. When that didn't work, he decided to sell me instead. Figured if I was gone, the land would revert to him. That's not how inheritance law works. I know. But he's not smart enough to know that. He just wanted money for whiskey and gambling. Kent stood and paced the cabin, his mind working. The railroad won't stop. If they want that land, they'll come after you. I know. They'll try legal action first. Claim you're unfit to own property because you're a woman. Claim your mother's will was fraudulent. Claim you're mentally incompetent. Khloe's face went pale. Can they do that? If they own the right judge? Yes. Kent's expression was grim. And if legal action doesn't work, they'll come for me. Yes. Silence filled the cabin. I won't let that happen, Kent said firmly. But we need to be smart. We need documentation, witnesses, proof that can't be disputed. I have the deed, the original. My mother gave it to me before she died. Where is it? Hidden, in town, at the church. Reverend Thomas has it locked in his safe. Kent nodded slowly. That's good. Thomas is honest, but we can't go get it yet. Why not? Because right now the town thinks you're gone. Bought by a crazy mountain man. They'll forget about you. Stop looking. The railroad will focus their attention elsewhere. And then we wait. Let things settle. And when the time is right, we make our move. What kind of move? Kent looked at her, his gray eyes steady. We fight, the legal way, with witnesses and documents and truth. We show that judge and that town that you're not some helpless girl. You're a property owner, a citizen, someone who deserves respect. Khloe's eyes filled with tears. You really think we can win? I think we have to try. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Then I'm with you. Good. Kent moved to the door. I'm going to check the trap lines. Should be gone a few hours. You rest. Explore. Make yourself at home. Wait. Khloe stood. Can I come with you? Kent looked surprised. It's cold out there. Rough terrain. I've lived in Silver Creek my whole life. I know cold. I know rough. She lifted her chin. And I'd rather be useful than sit here wondering when the railroad men will come. Kent studied her for a moment. Then he nodded. Get dressed warm. We leave in 10 minutes. The trap line stretched 5 miles through the forest. Kent moved through the snow with practiced ease, checking each trap, resetting springs, collecting pelts. Khloe followed, watching, learning. You place them near water, she observed. Animals need to drink. Water brings them through. And you disguise them with leaves and branches, so they don't spook. She knelt beside a trap, studying the mechanism. This is clever. The spring releases when they step on the plate. You catch on quick. My mother taught me to observe, to ask questions. Khloe looked up at him. She said the smartest people are the ones who admit they don't know everything. Kent almost smiled. Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman. She was, until the consumption took her. Khloe's voice went quiet. It was fast. 3 months from cough to the end. I took care of her the whole time. My father couldn't bear to watch. I'm sorry. Don't be. Those last 3 months, they were the most important of my life. She told me everything. About my grandmother, about the land, about how to survive in a world that doesn't respect women. Khloe stood brushing snow from her skirt. She made me promise to fight, to never let anyone take what was mine. You're keeping that promise. I'm trying to. They walked in silence for a while. The only sounds the crunch of snow and the distant call of a hawk. Can I ask you something? Khloe said. Go ahead. Why do you trap? Why not farm or ranch? Kent paused at the next trap, his hands working the mechanism. Trapping keeps you moving, keeps you alone. No neighbors, no questions, no expectations. Sounds lonely. It is. Do you like it? He looked at her, his expression unreadable. I did. Before. Before what? Before last night. Khloe's breath caught. Kent reset the trap and stood. Come on. 3 more to check, then we head back. By the time they returned to the cabin, the sun was setting, and Khloe's legs ached from walking through snow. But her mind felt clearer than it had in months. She'd been useful, active, learning, not sitting, not hiding, not waiting to be hurt. Kent hung the pelts to dry while Khloe started a fire and began preparing dinner with the supplies he had: dried beans, salt pork onions, flour. You know how to make biscuits? Kent asked. My mother's recipe. They were the only thing my father never complained about. Then make extra. I haven't had good biscuits in 5 years. Khloe smiled and got to work. An hour later, the cabin smelled like heaven. Beans simmering with pork, fresh biscuits browning in the Dutch oven, coffee perking on the stove. Kent sat at the table watching her work, something shifting in his expression. What? Khloe asked. This cabin hasn't felt like a home in 15 years. And now? He looked around at the clean floors, the organized shelves, the smell of real cooking, and nodded slowly. Now it's starting to. They ate dinner together, talking about trap lines and weather, and the best way to cure pelts. Normal things, simple things, things that felt like life instead of survival. After dinner, Khloe cleared the plates and noticed Kent's trade ledger sitting open on the shelf. She glanced at it, then stopped. Mr. McKenna, can I ask about your trading? He looked up from oiling a trap. What about it? You sold 30 beaver pelts to Morrison's trading post last month. That's right. He paid you $45. He did. Khloe frowned. That's $1.50 per pelt. Is it? Beaver pelts are worth at least $3 each in town. Prime winter pelts like yours $4. Maybe $5. Kent froze the oil rag still in his hand. What did you say? Khloe picked up the ledger and flipped through it, her finger tracing the numbers. Look, every single trade, every sale, for years. He's been paying you half, sometimes a third of what your furs are worth. Kent stood and walked over, staring at the ledger like it was written in a foreign language. 30 pelts should have brought you $120. Minimum. He paid you $45. She turned the page. Here, 40 mink pelts. He paid you $60. Mink are worth $3 each. You should have made $120. Morrison's been cheating me. For years. Kent's face darkened, not with rage, with realization, with shame. I trusted him. He said prices were down, said demand was low. I believed him because I don't come to town. I don't know the markets. Khloe's voice was gentle. You're not stupid for trusting someone. He's wrong for lying. Kent sat down heavily, running his hand through his hair. How much has he stolen? Khloe did quick calculations in her head. Based on these numbers, over 3 years, at least $2,000. The number hung in the air like a gunshot. 2,000, Kent repeated quietly. Yes. That's a fortune. I know. He looked at her, really looked, and saw something he hadn't expected. Intelligence, precision, value. You're not just kind, Miss May. You're brilliant. Khloe blushed and turned away. I'm just good with numbers. No. Kent's voice was firm. You're sharp. You see things I miss. You understand things I don't. He stood and moved to the fire, staring into the flames. I was a fool to trust Morrison, but I'm not fool enough to ignore this. What will you do? I don't know yet, but I'm done being cheated. Khloe set the ledger down carefully. When we go back to town for the deed, we can confront him. Together. Kent turned and looked at her. Together. If you want. Something shifted in his expression, softened. Yeah, together. That night, after Khloe had gone to her small room and pulled the curtain closed, Kent sat alone by the fire, staring at that ledger. For 15 years, he'd lived alone on this mountain. No friends, no family, no connections. He'd told himself it was better that way. Safer. Simpler. But now there was a young woman in his cabin who could read a ledger and spot fraud in minutes, who could walk 5 miles through snow without complaining, who could turn his lonely house into something that felt like home, and he realized with sudden sharp clarity that he didn't want to be alone anymore. 3 weeks passed. Khloe settled into cabin life with surprising ease. She mended Kent's torn shirts, dozens of them all patched and repatched over years. She swept and organized and cooked meals that made the small space smell alive. And she hummed old hymns, songs her mother taught her, melodies that filled the silence with something Kent had forgotten: joy. He found himself listening for those songs while he checked traps. Found himself hurrying back to the cabin earlier each day just to hear them. They fell into a rhythm. Kent would leave at dawn to work the trap lines. Khloe would clean and cook and study his maps, learning the territory. In the evenings, they'd eat together and talk about books about the war, about life before everything went wrong. Kent taught her how to shoot, how to track, how to read weather in the clouds. Khloe taught him how to keep proper books, how to calculate fair prices, how to spot a lie in a contract. They became partners, not master and servant, not owner and property, equals. One evening, Khloe was stirring a pot of stew when she noticed Kent watching her from the table. What? She asked. You hum when you're happy. She blushed. It's a habit. My mother used to. Don't apologize. It's... He searched for the word. It's nice. Khloe smiled and went back to stirring. Kent looked down at the ledger in front of him. He'd been teaching himself to keep better records and spoke quietly. I'm glad you're here. Khloe froze. I know that sounds wrong, Kent continued, given how you came to be here. But I am. Glad, I mean. She turned to face him. I'm glad too. Really? Really? Khloe set down the spoon. For the first time in years, I feel safe, useful, like a person instead of a burden. Kent's expression softened. You were never a burden. You were just surrounded by people too blind to see your value. Tears pricked her eyes. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. They held each other's gaze for a long moment. Something unspoken passing between them. Something neither was ready to name. Then the stew boiled over, and Khloe yelped, grabbing a cloth to save it, and the moment broke. But it didn't disappear. It just waited. On a cold Tuesday morning, exactly 3 weeks after the auction, everything changed. Khloe was at the creek behind the cabin washing clothes in the icy water, humming Amazing Grace while she scrubbed. She didn't hear the horses until they were already in the clearing. She looked up. 3 men sat on horseback, dressed in dark coats, rifles across their saddles, eyes scanning the cabin like wolves spotting prey. Khloe's blood went cold. Railroad men. She knew them, recognized them from town. Dane Fletcher, the foreman. Jack Cord, his enforcer. And a third man she didn't know, young and mean-looking. Fletcher saw her and smiled. "Well, well. Miss May, been looking for you." Khloe dropped the laundry and ran. "Kent!" she screamed. "Kent!" The cabin door burst open. Kent emerged, rifle in hand, eyes already tracking the riders. "Get inside!" he shouted to Khloe. But Fletcher was faster. He spurred his horse forward, cutting off her path to the cabin. Khloe skidded to a stop, trapped between the creek and the mounted men. Kent raised his rifle. "You're trespassing. Leave, now." Fletcher laughed. "Can't do that, McKenna. Got business with the girl." "She's not your business." "Judge says different. Says she's got questions to answer about property fraud." "What fraud?" "Her mama's will. Turns out there's some inconsistencies. Judge wants to see her. Today." "That's a lie." Fletcher shrugged. "Maybe. Maybe not. Either way, she's coming with us." Kent's finger moved to the trigger. "Over my dead body." "That can be arranged." Everything happened at once. Jack Cord drew his pistol. Kent swung the rifle toward him. The third man, the young one, pulled a club from his saddle and spurred his horse straight at Kent. Kent fired. The shot went wide deliberately, Khloe realized later. He'd been aiming to warn, not kill. But Cord didn't hesitate. His pistol cracked. The bullet hit Kent's rifle, tearing it from his hands. The young man's club connected with Kent's skull. Kent went down, hard, blood pouring from his scalp. "No!" Khloe screamed. She ran toward him, but Fletcher was already off his horse, grabbing her arm, dragging her backward. "Easy now, miss. Don't make this harder." "Let me go. He's hurt. He needs—" Cord kicked Kent in the ribs, hard. The sound of breaking bones echoed across the clearing. Kent tried to rise, blood streaming down his face, but the young man hit him again and again. Khloe fought like a wildcat, scratching, biting, screaming, but Fletcher was too strong. He hauled her toward his horse while Cord tied her hands with rough rope. "Stop fighting," Fletcher said. "Judge just wants to talk. Answer a few questions. Then you can come back to your pet bear here." "You're killing him." "Nah, just teaching him not to interfere." The young man kicked Kent one more time in the head this time, and Kent went still, completely still. "Kent!" Khloe's scream tore through the air. Fletcher threw her onto his horse and mounted behind her. "Let's go. We're done here." As they rode away, Khloe twisted in the saddle, staring back at the cabin. Kent lay motionless in the snow, blood pooling around his head. His body bent at an unnatural angle. She couldn't tell if he was breathing, couldn't tell if he was alive. The last thing she saw before the forest swallowed them was Kent's hand, those massive, gentle hands that had saved her, lying still and open in the snow. Please, God. Please let him live. Please. But God didn't answer. The forest closed around them. And Khloe May disappeared into the hands of the men she'd been running from all along. The rope burned Khloe's wrists. Fletcher's horse moved fast through the forest branches, whipping past her face, cold air tearing at her lungs. She couldn't stop shaking, couldn't stop seeing Kent lying in the snow, blood spreading like spilled wine. His chest may be moving, maybe not. "He's dead," she whispered. Fletcher's breath was hot against her ear. "Probably. Cord don't pull punches." "You killed him." "We defended ourselves." Mountain Man pulled a rifle on lawful officers of the court. "Judge will see it that way." Khloe twisted against the rope, her voice breaking. "There is no court order. You're lying." "Careful, miss. Accusations like that could get you in more trouble." They rode for an hour. Jack Cord led the way, his pistol still drawn, eyes scanning the trees like he expected Kent to rise from the dead and come hunting. The young man, Fletcher called him Tommy, rode behind, whistling a tuneless song that made Khloe's skin crawl. When they finally broke through the tree line and Silver Creek came into view, the sun was setting, painting the snow blood red. Fletcher pulled his horse to a stop at the edge of town. "Here's how this works," he said quietly. "We ride in peaceful. You don't scream, don't cause a scene, don't tell stories about what happened up on that mountain. You do, and we go back and finish what we started with McKenna. Understood?" Khloe's throat closed. I said understood. Yes. Good girl. They rode down Main Street as the church bell rang 6 times. People stopped to stare. Mrs. Henderson gasped and clutched her shawl. Mr. Carver shook his head. Tommy Wright, the boy who'd asked her to dance once, turned away like he couldn't bear to look. Fletcher guided his horse straight to the courthouse, a 2-story timber building that doubled as the jail. He dismounted and hauled Khloe down after him, her legs nearly buckling. Inside. The courthouse was cold, dark. A single lantern burned on a desk where a clerk sat scratching notes in a ledger. He looked up, adjusted his spectacles, and went back to writing without a word. Fletcher pushed Khloe through a side door into a small holding room. 4 walls. 1 window with bars. A bench. Nothing else. "You wait here. Judge will see you in the morning." "What judge, what charges?" Fletcher smiled. "Property fraud, forgery, mental incompetence. Take your pick." "Those are lies." "Maybe, but the judge don't think so." He stepped into the doorway. "Get some rest, miss. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. Khloe stood frozen in the middle of the room, her mind reeling. Property fraud, forgery, mental incompetence. They were going to take her land, take everything her mother died protecting. And she couldn't stop them because the one person who'd tried to help her was lying dead in the snow. She sank onto the bench, buried her face in her hands, and cried until she had no tears left. Hours passed. The lantern outside her door burned down to nothing. Darkness filled the room like water filling a well. Khloe lay on the bench, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of Silver Creek settling in for the night. Horses, voices. Laughter from Murphy's saloon, where her father was probably drinking Kent's silver. She thought about her mother, about Thunder Spring, about Kent's gray eyes and the way he'd said nobody should be sold. She thought about dying, about giving up, about letting the railroad win because fighting was too hard and she was too tired and nobody cared anyway. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Quiet. Careful. A key turning in the lock. Khloe sat up, her heart hammering. The door opened. Reverend Thomas stood in the doorway holding a covered lantern, his finger pressed to his lips. "Quickly," he whispered. "We don't have much time." Khloe stared at him. "Reverend, come. Now." She stumbled to her feet and followed him into the dark hallway. The clerk's desk was empty. The front door stood ajar. "Where is everyone?" "I paid the clerk $20 to take a long dinner break. We have maybe 20 minutes before Fletcher realizes you're not locked up anymore. You're helping me escape. I'm helping you survive." Thomas pushed the front door open and looked both ways down the street. "This way. Stay close." They moved through the shadows between buildings, avoiding the main street, heading toward the church at the far end of town. Khloe's legs shook with every step. Her mind couldn't process what was happening. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Because what they're doing to you is wrong. What they did to that mountain man is wrong. And I won't stand by and watch anymore." "They'll punish you." "Let them try." Thomas's voice was hard. "I've been a coward too long. Your mother would be ashamed of me." They reached the church and slipped inside. Thomas locked the door behind them and lit 3 lanterns, filling the small sanctuary with warm light. "Sit," he said, pointing to a pew. Khloe sat. Thomas disappeared into his office and returned carrying a leather satchel and a tin of salve. "Let me see your wrists." She held out her hands. The rope had cut deep, leaving raw wounds that were starting to bleed. Thomas worked quickly, cleaning the cuts, applying salve, wrapping them in clean cloth. His hands shook. "I heard what happened," he said quietly. "Tommy's already bragging about it at the saloon. Says they beat McKenna nearly to death. Says he's probably dead by now." Khloe's voice broke. "They killed him because of me." "No, they killed him because he stood up to evil. That's not your fault. He saved me, and I got him killed." Thomas gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Listen to me, Khloe May. Kent McKenna knew what he was doing. He knew the risk. He did it anyway because it was right. You don't dishonor that sacrifice by giving up." "What else can I do? They own the judge. They own the law. They'll take my land, and there's always something." Thomas stood and pulled a thick envelope from the satchel. "Your mother gave this to me 3 days before she died. Made me swear I'd protect it. Made me swear I'd give it to you when you needed it most." He handed her the envelope. Khloe's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was the deed to Thunder Spring, original, legal, signed and witnessed. But there was more. Letters, testimonies, documents. "What is all this?" "Proof. Your mother knew the railroad would come after you. So she documented everything. Every offer they made. Every threat. Every bribe attempt." Thomas pointed to the papers. "That's a letter from the territorial governor acknowledging your ownership. That's a survey confirming the property lines. That's testimony from 3 different lawyers stating the deed is legal and binding." Khloe stared at the papers like they were written in gold. She prepared for this. She prepared for war, because she knew that's what it would take to protect you. But what good are papers if the judge is bought? That's why you're not staying for his trial. Thomas pulled a second envelope from the satchel, this one containing money. "That's $300, enough to get you to Helena, to the territorial capital, to a court that isn't controlled by the railroad." Khloe's head spun. "You want me to run?" "I want you to fight. But smart. Not here where they control everything." He pressed the money into her hands. "There's a wagon leaving for Helena at dawn. Miller's Freight Company. I already paid for your passage. You get on that wagon. You take these documents. You file with the territorial court. You force this into the open where they can't hide. But Fletcher will come after me. Fletcher will try, but I'll slow him down. Give you a head start." "How?" Thomas's smile was grim. "By telling the truth, loudly, publicly, in front of witnesses who can't all be bought." Khloe looked at the old reverend, this man who'd baptized her, who'd buried her mother, who'd watched her humiliation and done nothing, and saw something different now. Courage. "They'll hurt you," she whispered. "Probably. But I'm old and tired and ready to do something that matters." He squeezed her hand. "You're not alone in this, child. Not anymore." A knock on the church door made them both freeze. Thomas blew out 2 of the lanterns and moved to the door. "Who's there?" "It's Martha Connolly. Let me in, quickly." Thomas unlocked the door. A woman in her 50s rushed inside, her face flushed, her breath coming fast. Khloe recognized her, the widow who owned the ranch north of town. "They know," Martha said. "Fletcher knows she's gone. He's gathering men right now. They'll search every building in town." "How much time do we have?" "Minutes, maybe less." Martha looked at Khloe. "Can you ride?" Yes, I can ride." "Good. My horse is tied behind the church. You take her and ride north to my ranch. Stay off the main road. Follow the creek. You'll reach my property in 2 hours. My foreman knows you're coming. He'll hide you until dawn." "But the wagon?" "Leaves from my ranch, not from town. I own Miller's Freight Company. Fletcher doesn't know that yet." Martha pulled Khloe to her feet. "Move, now. Every second counts." Thomas pressed the satchel into Khloe's hands. "Go, fight, win, Make your mother proud. What about you? I'll be fine. I've got God and truth on my side. That's more than Fletcher has. Martha dragged Khloe toward the back door. They stepped out into the cold night air. A strong bay mare stood tied to the fence, already saddled. Her name is Duchess. She's fast and she's loyal. Treat her right and she'll get you there. Khloe climbed into the saddle, the satchel clutched to her chest. She looked down at Martha and Thomas standing in the church doorway, risking everything to save her. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank us. Just survive. And when you win, remember who stood with you." Martha slapped the horse's flank. "Now go!" Duchess launched into a gallop. Khloe held on for her life as the church disappeared behind her, as Silver Creek became a collection of distant lights as the forest swallowed her whole. Behind her, she heard shouting. Fletcher's voice, Cord's laughter. But she didn't look back. She rode like her mother's ghost was guiding her. Rode like Kent's sacrifice meant something. Rode like she was worth saving. The creek appeared on her left, moonlight turning it silver. She followed it north, the horse's hooves pounding through snow, her breath coming in frozen clouds. 2 hours, Martha had said. 2 hours to safety. Khloe leaned forward and whispered in Duchess's ear. "Please, please get me there." The mare's ears flicked back, listening, and she ran faster. The forest blurred past. Miles disappeared. Time became meaningless. When the ranch house finally appeared, a sturdy 2-story building with smoke rising from the chimney, Khloe nearly sobbed with relief. A man stepped out of the barn, holding a lantern, tall, gray-haired, weathered face. "Miss May?" "Yes." "I'm Hank, Mrs. Connolly's foreman. Get down, quickly. I'll hide the horse." Khloe slid from the saddle, her legs barely holding her. Hank took the reins and led Duchess into the barn. Another man appeared from the house, younger, maybe 30, with kind eyes and a rifle across his back. "I'm Daniel, Martha's son. Come inside. You're safe now." Safe. The word felt impossible. Khloe followed him into the ranch house. Warmth hit her like a physical thing. A fire crackled in the hearth. Soup simmered on the stove. A woman, Daniel's wife, emerged from the kitchen. "Sit," she said gently. "You look half dead." Khloe collapsed into a chair. The woman pressed a bowl of soup into her hands. Hot, real, life-giving. "Eat, then sleep. The wagon leaves at dawn." "Fletcher will come here." "Let him." Daniel checked his rifle. "This is private property. He's got no authority here. And even if he tries something, he'll find we're not as easy to push around as an unarmed preacher." Khloe ate the soup without tasting it. Her mind was still back in that cabin. Still seeing Kent fall. Still hearing the sound of breaking bones. "The mountain man," she said quietly. "Kent McKenna. Is there any way to find out if he's—" Daniel's expression darkened. "I sent a man up there 2 hours ago. Just got back. The cabin's empty. No body, no blood trail. Either he survived and crawled off, or animals dragged him away. So he might be alive. Maybe. Or maybe he made it into the forest and died there. Hard to say." Khloe's hands tightened around the bowl. She wanted to believe he was alive, needed to believe it. Because if he was dead, if he'd died for nothing, if she failed now. "I have to win," she whispered. "I have to make this count." "You will." Daniel's wife sat down beside her. "Martha sent word ahead. The territorial judge in Helena is expecting you. He's honest. Can't be bought. He'll hear your case." "And if Fletcher follows me?" "Then he follows you into a city with real law, real witnesses, real consequences." She squeezed Khloe's hand. "You're not a helpless girl in a corrupt town anymore. You're a property owner with documentation and allies. That changes everything." Khloe wanted to believe her, tried to believe her, but exhaustion pulled at her like an anchor, dragging her down into darkness. "Sleep," the woman said. "You've got 4 hours before the wagon leaves. Use them." Khloe let herself be led to a small bedroom. Clean sheets, soft pillow. The door closed behind her. She lay down fully clothed, the satchel clutched to her chest like armor, and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. When she woke, dawn light streamed through the window, and someone was knocking on the door. "Miss May, it's time." Khloe sat up disoriented, her body aching from yesterday's violence. She splashed water on her face from a basin and stepped into the hallway. Daniel stood waiting, his expression grim. "Fletcher came 2 hours ago. Demanded we hand you over." Chloe's heart stopped. "What did you do?" "Told him to get off my property or face a rifle. He left, but he's watching the road. He knows you'll have to leave eventually." "Then how do I—" "You don't take the road?" Daniel led her outside where a freight wagon sat loaded with supplies, the driver already in his seat. "You're going as cargo. There's a space under the floorboards. Hidden. It'll be uncomfortable, but you'll be invisible." Khloe stared at the wagon, her stomach twisting. "How long?" 8 hours to Helena. Maybe 10 if the snow's bad. And if they search the wagon, they won't find you. I've used this route before, for other people who needed to disappear." His eyes were steady. "Trust me." Khloe looked at this man she barely knew, this family risking everything to save her, and nodded. "Okay." Daniel helped her into the back of the wagon. He lifted a section of the floorboards, revealing a narrow space beneath, maybe 3 feet wide, barely tall enough to lie flat. "Your satchel goes with you. There's water, blankets, a chamber pot if you need it. Once we close this, you don't make a sound, no matter what you hear. Understood?" "Yes." "Good. Lie down." Khloe climbed into the space, her heart hammering. Daniel handed her the satchel, the water, the blankets. "You're brave," he said quietly. "Braver than most men I know. Your mother would be proud." Then he lowered the floorboards. Darkness swallowed her whole. She heard nails being hammered back into place, heard cargo being loaded on top, heard the driver climbing into his seat. Then the wagon lurched forward, and they were moving. Khloe lay in the cramped darkness, the wagon jolting over every rock and rut, her body pressed against hard wood, breathing the musty air. This was survival. This was fighting. This was what her mother had prepared her for. She closed her eyes and thought of Kent, of his gray eyes and gentle hands, and the way he'd said, "You're brilliant." "Stay alive," she prayed. "Please stay alive. Let me see you again. Let me tell you that you saved me. Let me tell you that I—" The wagon stopped. Voices. Loud. Angry. Fletcher's voice. "Open it up, now!" The driver's voice was calm. "This is private freight. Mrs. Connolly's property. You got no right?" "I got every right. Judge's orders. We're looking for a fugitive." "There's no fugitive here. Just supplies heading to Helena." "Then you won't mind if we check." Footsteps. Heavy. Moving around the wagon. Khloe held her breath, her heart pounding so hard she was sure they'd hear it. Cargo shifted, boxes being moved, tarps pulled back. Fletcher's voice right above her. "What's under the floor?" "Nothing. Just support beams." "You sure about that?" "Sure as I'm sitting here." Silence. Long. Terrible. Then Fletcher's footsteps moved away. "All right. Move on. But if I find out you're lying—" "You won't." The wagon lurched forward again. Khloe lay frozen, not daring to breathe, not daring to move. They rode for what felt like hours. The jolting became unbearable. Her back screamed. Her legs cramped. But she didn't make a sound. Finally, the wagon stopped again. The cargo shifted. The floorboards lifted. Daylight poured in, blinding her. The driver's face appeared. "We're here. Helena, you made it." Khloe climbed out of the hidden space, her legs barely working, her body numb. She looked around. They were in a city. A real city. Buildings 3 stories tall. Paved streets. People everywhere. And no Fletcher. No cord. No railroad men. "Where do I go?" she asked. The driver pointed to a large stone building down the street. Territorial Courthouse. 3rd floor. Judge Warren's chambers. He's expecting you. Khloe clutched the satchel and climbed down from the wagon. Her legs shook. Her hands trembled. But she walked. One step. Then another. Then another. People stared at her, this girl, in torn clothes, bruised wrists, wild eyes. But she didn't care. She walked up the courthouse steps, pushed through the heavy doors, climbed 3 flights of stairs, found a door marked Judge Marcus Warren. She knocked. "Come in." Khloe pushed the door open. An older man sat behind a massive desk, gray hair, sharp eyes, reading spectacles perched on his nose. He looked up at her, and his expression softened. "Miss, may I presume?" "Yes, sir." "Sit, please. You look like you've been through hell." Khloe sat the satchel in her lap, and the words poured out. Everything. The auction. Kent. The railroad. The attack. The documents. Judge Warren listened without interrupting. When she finished, he held out his hand. "May I see the documents?" She handed him the satchel. He spread the papers across his desk and read in silence for 20 minutes. His expression grew darker with each page. Finally, he looked up. "This is ironclad. Your ownership is legitimate. The railroad has no claim." "But they have the judge in Silver Creek. They'll rule against me anyway." "Not if I rule first." Warren pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began writing. "I'm issuing an immediate injunction. As of this moment, all claims against your property are suspended pending territorial review. Any attempt to seize your land or harm you will be considered contempt of court, punishable by federal prosecution." Khloe's breath caught. "You can do that. I just did." He signed the document with a flourish and stamped it with an official seal. "This overrides any local ruling. The railroad will receive a copy today. So will the sheriff in Silver Creek. So will every lawyer within 200 miles. What if they ignore it? Then I'll have federal marshals arrest them." Warren's smile was cold. "The railroad doesn't own me, Miss May, and they're about to learn that." Tears streamed down Khloe's face. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet. This is just the first step. They'll fight back, hire expensive lawyers, drag this out for months." "I don't care, as long as I have a chance." "You have more than a chance. You have the law on your side, and that's worth more than all their money combined." He stood and walked her to the door. "There's a boarding house 2 blocks east. Mrs. Chen's place. Tell her I sent you. She'll give you a room at a fair price. Stay there, rest, heal. I'll send word when the trial is scheduled." Khloe nodded, barely able to process what was happening. She'd made it. She'd actually made it. She walked out of this courthouse into the afternoon sun, the injunction clutched in her hands, and let herself cry. Not from fear, not from pain. From hope. For the first time in months, she had hope. She found Mrs. Chen's boarding house exactly where Warren said it would be. A kind Chinese woman took one look at her and ushered her inside without questions. "You need bath, food, sleep, in that order." Khloe let herself be cared for, let herself be human again. That night, lying in a real bed with clean sheets and locked doors, she thought about Kent, about his cabin, his gentle hands, his sad gray eyes, about the way he'd fought for her, the way he'd fallen. "Are you alive?" she wondered. "Are you out there somewhere? Are you thinking about me?" The questions had no answers. But somewhere deep in her heart, beneath the fear and exhaustion and pain, something whispered. He's alive. He has to be. Because the story isn't over yet. Khloe closed her eyes and let sleep take her. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new challenges, new pain. But tonight, for the first time since her mother died, she was safe. And that was enough. 3 days after Khloe arrived in Helena, Kent McKenna woke up in hell. Not the biblical kind, the earthly kind. The kind where every breath felt like broken glass in his lungs, and his skull throbbed with a pain so intense he couldn't see straight. He tried to move. Couldn't. His body wouldn't respond. "Easy now. Don't try to sit up." The voice was female. Old. Firm. Kent forced his eyes open. The world swam into focus slowly. Wooden ceiling. Rough-hewn beams. Firelight dancing on the walls. A woman's face appeared above him. Maybe 60. Weathered skin. Sharp blue eyes. Gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Who?" Kent's voice came out as a rasp. "Where?" "You're at my cabin. 5 miles south of where those railroad bastards left you for dead." She pressed a cool cloth to his forehead. "Name's Sarah Bridger. And before you ask, yes, you've been unconscious for 3 days." Kent tried to process that. Failed. His head hurt too much. "The girl," he managed. "Khloe. Did they took her. Dragged her back to Silver Creek 3 days ago. That's all I know." Kent tried to sit up. Pain exploded through his ribs, and he collapsed back with a strangled gasp. "I said don't move, you damn fool." Sarah's hands were surprisingly strong as she pushed him back down. "You've got 3 broken ribs, a cracked skull, and a concussion that should have killed you. The only reason you're alive is because I found you before the wolves did." "How?" "I was checking my trap lines. Heard the gunshot. By the time I got there, they were gone, and you were lying in a pool of blood. Took me 2 hours to get you onto my sled and drag you here." She soaked the cloth in a basin and wrung it out. "You're lucky I'm stronger than I look." Kent's vision blurred. The room spun. I have to go after her. Have to." "You're not going anywhere. You can barely breathe, let alone ride a horse. She needs me. What she needs is for you to heal, so you don't die in a ditch somewhere. Now shut up and drink this." She pressed a cup to his lips. Bitter liquid flooded his mouth. He tried to spit it out, but she held his jaw firm. "Swallow. It's willow bark and laudanum. For the pain." Kent swallowed. The liquid burned going down. "Sleep," Sarah commanded. "When you wake up, we'll talk about what comes next. But Khloe, we'll still be in trouble whether you're conscious or not. Now sleep before I knock you out myself." The laudanum pulled at Kent like an anchor. His eyes grew heavy. The pain receded to a dull roar. "Why are you helping me?" he whispered. Sarah's face softened just slightly. "Because somebody should have helped my daughter when she needed it. Nobody did. She died alone and scared, and I never forgave myself." Her voice hardened. "I won't make that mistake twice. Now sleep." Darkness took him. When Kent woke again, sunlight streamed through the window, and the pain had dulled to something almost bearable. He could move his fingers, his toes, could turn his head without wanting to scream. Progress. Sarah sat at the table mending a shirt, her needle moving in quick, efficient strokes. She glanced up when she heard him stir. "Welcome back to the living." Kent pushed himself up to sitting, gritting his teeth against the pain in his ribs. "How long was I out?" "Another full day. It's Friday morning." Friday. Kent's mind raced. 4 days since the attack. 4 days since Khloe was taken. "I need to get to town. Need to find out what happened to her." "Already know what happened to her." Kent's head snapped up. "What?" Sarah set down her mending. "Reverend Thomas came by yesterday. Said the railroad men brought her to Silver Creek, locked her up for one night, then she disappeared." "Disappeared?" "Thomas helped her escape. Got her out of the holding cell and onto a wagon headed for Helena. She made it. Filed papers with the territorial judge. Got an injunction protecting her property." Kent stared at her, barely able to process the words. She did it. She made it to Helena." "She did. Thomas says Judge Warren issued a ruling 3 days ago. Any attempt to seize her land or harm her is now a federal crime. Railroad's lawyers are scrambling to fight it, but they're in real trouble." Relief flooded through Kent so intense he nearly passed out again. "She's safe. She's actually safe. For now. But the railroad isn't giving up. They've got lawyers filing appeals, bribing officials, trying to find loopholes. This fight's a long way from over. Then I need to get to Helena, need to help her. You need to heal first. Sarah stood and ladled soup from a pot on the stove. You ride to Helena in your condition, you'll die before you get there. And that won't help anyone. Kent's jaw tightened. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to act, to find Khloe. But his body betrayed him. Just sitting up had exhausted him. How long? He asked quietly. Until you can ride 2 weeks, maybe 3. I don't have 3 weeks. Then you better heal fast. Sarah set the soup in front of him. Eat. Sleep. Let your body do its work. Meanwhile, I'll keep my ear to the ground, find out what's happening in town. Kent ate the soup mechanically, his mind racing. 2 weeks. Khloe was alone in Helena for 2 weeks, vulnerable, surrounded by lawyers and railroad men who wanted her destroyed. Thomas said something else, Sarah added, watching him carefully. Said you paid $500 for that girl. Said you bought her like livestock. Kent's spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. He also said you gave her your coat, your room, your respect. Said you treated her like a human being when nobody else would. Sarah's eyes were sharp. That true? Yes. Why? Kent set down the spoon. Because I watched my sister sold when I was 12. Couldn't stop it then. Swore I'd stop it if I ever saw it again. Sarah nodded slowly. Thomas says the town's talking. Half think you're a madman. Other half think you're a saint. Which one are you? Neither. I'm just a man who is tired of watching people suffer. And the girl? What is she to you? Kent looked down at his hands. Those big scarred hands that had held a rifle and built traps and caught Khloe when she stumbled off that wagon. She's someone worth saving. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. Sarah studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Fair enough. Finish your soup. Then we'll work on getting you back on your feet. The days that followed were brutal. Sarah made him walk. Just around the cabin at first, then outside in the snow, then farther and farther, until his ribs stopped screaming and his head stopped spinning. She changed his bandages, fed him bone broth and venison stew, made him do breathing exercises to keep his lungs from filling with fluid. And she talked about her daughter Mary, who'd been taken by a man claiming to be a preacher, about how Sarah had searched for years but never found her, about how the guilt had eaten her alive until she'd come to the mountains to escape it. I couldn't save her, Sarah said one evening as they sat by the fire. But maybe I can save you. And maybe you can save that girl. Maybe that's how we make peace with our failures. Kent looked at her across the flickering light. You didn't fail. You tried. Trying isn't enough. Not when someone you love is suffering. Someone I love. Kent repeated the words quietly. I barely know her. Don't matter. Love isn't about time. It's about seeing someone for who they really are and choosing to stand beside them anyway. Sarah's eyes were knowing. You saw that girl on that wagon, and you didn't see fat or shame or worthlessness. You saw a person. That's love, whether you want to call it that or not. Kent stared into the fire. Sarah's words settling over him like snow. Was that what this was? Love? He thought about Khloe's hands shaking as she ate that first meal in his cabin. About the way she hummed while she worked. About her brilliant mind catching the fraud in his ledgers. About her tears when he'd given her a room with a lock. About how the cabin had felt like a tomb before she arrived and a home after. I need to see her again, he said quietly. Then get strong enough to ride, because she's going to need you before this is over. On the 10th day, Reverend Thomas came to the cabin. Kent was outside splitting wood, slowly, carefully testing his strength, when the old man rode up on a tired mare. McKenna, you're alive. Kent set down the axe. Barely, thanks to Mrs. Bridger. Thomas dismounted, his face grim. I need to tell you what's happening in town. It's not good. They went inside. Sarah poured coffee. Thomas warmed his hands by the fire before speaking. Fletcher's been arrested. Kent's eyebrows shot up. What? Judge Warren sent federal marshals to Silver Creek 2 days ago. Arrested Fletcher, Cord, and Tommy on charges of assault, kidnapping, and intimidation of a witness. They're in Helena awaiting trial. That's good news? It is, but there's more. The railroad hired a team of lawyers from San Francisco. Expensive ones. They're claiming Khloe's mother was mentally incompetent when she wrote the will. That the property should have passed to the state. That Khloe has no legal claim. Kent's hands tightened around his coffee cup. That's absurd. It is. But they've got doctors willing to testify. Officials willing to lie. They're building a case designed to destroy her credibility. Can Warren stop it? He's trying. But this is going to trial. Full territorial hearing. And Khloe's going to have to testify. In front of a courtroom full of people who'll rip apart every word she says. Kent stood, ignoring the pain in his ribs. When? 3 weeks, maybe 4. I'll be there. Thomas looked at him doubtfully. You can barely stand. I said I'll be there. Kent's voice was iron. She faced that auction alone. She escaped that jail alone. She rode to Helena alone. She's not facing that courtroom alone. Sarah smiled from her corner. Stubborn fool. Yes, ma'am. Thomas pulled a letter from his coat. This is from her, Khloe. She gave it to me before she left. Made me promise to deliver it if you were still alive. Kent's hands shook as he took the envelope. His name was written on the front in careful script. He waited until Thomas and Sarah stepped outside before he opened it. The letter was short, 2 pages. But every word hit him like a physical blow. Dear Kent, if you're reading this, it means Reverend Thomas found you alive. I've been praying for that every night. Praying that the God who brought you into my life wouldn't take you out of it so soon. I don't know how to thank you. Words feel too small. You saved my life, not just from my father or the auction or the railroad. You saved me from believing I was worthless, from believing I deserved the shame and mockery. You looked at me and saw a person. That changed everything. I'm in Helena now, safe, fighting. Judge Warren is helping me, but I'm scared. Scared of the courtroom, scared of failing, scared that I'll lose everything my mother died protecting. I wish you were here, not because I need someone to fight for me, but because you taught me how to fight for myself. And I think maybe I taught you something too, that you don't have to carry your guilt alone, that Sarah's story doesn't have to be your story forever. If you heal, if you survive, come find me. Not because you owe me anything, but because I want to see you again. I want to tell you that your $500 wasn't wasted, that I'm becoming the person you believed I could be. And maybe if you'll let me, I want to help you become the person you deserve to be too. With gratitude and hope. Khloe May. Kent read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it carefully, tucked it into his shirt pocket, and walked outside where Sarah and Thomas were talking. I'm riding to Helena tomorrow. Sarah turned. You're not ready. I'm ready enough. She needs me. That's all that matters. You'll tear open your ribs, maybe crack your skull worse. You could die on that road. Kent's smile was grim. Then I'll die trying. That's better than sitting here doing nothing. Thomas stepped forward. I'm riding with you. If you're going, you're not going alone. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I've been a coward too long. Time to finish what I started. Sarah looked between them and sighed. Stubborn fools, both of you. She disappeared into the cabin and returned with a satchel. Bandages, laudanum, whiskey for pain, and food for 3 days. That's how long it'll take you to reach Helena if you don't kill yourselves first. Kent took the satchel. Thank you, Mrs. Bridger, for everything. Don't thank me. Just survive. And when you see that girl, you tell her Sarah Bridger says she's braver than any man I've ever met. I will. They left at dawn. Kent sat on his horse, every movement sending pain through his ribs, but his mind was clear. Thomas rode beside him, rifle across his saddle jaw, set with determination. You love her, Thomas said, after an hour of silence. I barely know her. That's not what I asked. Kent was quiet for a long time. The horses moved steadily through the snow, their breath steaming in the cold air. I don't know what I feel, he finally admitted. She was a job, a rescue, someone who needed help. But then she stayed and she changed everything. The cabin, me, the way I saw the world. That's called love, son. Maybe. Or maybe it's just gratitude. Maybe I'm confusing rescue with something deeper. Does it matter? Either way, you're riding to Helena with broken ribs to stand beside her. That tells me everything I need to know. Kent smiled despite the pain. You're a wise man, Reverend. I'm an old fool who let fear rule him too long, but I'm done with that now. They rode through the morning and into the afternoon. The pain in Kent's ribs grew worse with every mile, but he gritted his teeth and pushed through it. By evening, they reached a trading post 20 miles from Helena. The owner, a grizzled man named Dutch, took one look at Kent and shook his head. You look like death warmed over. I've been told. You got money for a room. Kent pulled out his coin purse. For 2 rooms. And hot food if you've got it. Dutch grunted. I've got stew. Beds aren't much, but they're clean. You'll be sharing the place with a few freight drivers, but they're harmless. They ate Dutch's stew, watery but hot, and listened to the freight drivers talk about Helena. About the territorial hearing. About the fat girl fighting the railroad. She's got guts, one driver said. Standing up to Northern Pacific like that, most people would have taken the money and run. She's got more than guts, another added. She's got Judge Warren on her side, and Warren don't lose cases. Railroad's got 6 lawyers. How's one girl supposed to fight that? Same way David fought Goliath, with a rock and faith. The drivers laughed, but Kent heard the respect in their voices. Khloe had become a story, a symbol, the girl who refused to be beaten. That night, lying in a lumpy bed in a cold room, Kent pulled out her letter and read it again by candlelight. Come find me. Not because you owe me anything, but because I want to see you again. He folded the letter and tucked it back into his pocket. I'm coming, he whispered into the darkness. I'm coming, Khloe. They reached Helena at noon the next day. The territorial capital was massive compared to Silver Creek. 3-story buildings, paved streets, carriages and wagons everywhere. People in fine clothes walking beside miners in dirty boots. Thomas led them to the boarding house where Khloe was staying. Mrs. Chen's place. A tidy building with clean windows and flowers in boxes despite the cold. Kent dismounted slowly, his ribs screaming, and walked to the door. He knocked. Mrs. Chen opened it, her sharp eyes taking in his battered face, his careful movements, his desperate expression. You're the mountain man. Yes, ma'am. She said you were dead. I'm not. I can see that. Mrs. Chen stepped aside. 2nd floor, 3rd door on the right. But you need to know something first. What? She cries every night, quiet, trying not to let anyone hear. But I hear. She thinks you died because of her. She's carrying that guilt like a stone. Kent's throat tightened. Thank you for telling me. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step in agony, and stopped in front of the 3rd door on the right. He raised his hand to knock. Paused. What if she didn't want to see him? What if seeing him brought back the trauma of the attack? What if the door opened? Khloe stood there in a simple dress, her hair pulled back, her face thinner than he remembered. She stared at him like he was a ghost. Kent. Hello, Khloe. Her face crumpled. A sob tore from her throat, and she launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his neck. The impact sent pain screaming through his ribs. But Kent didn't care. He wrapped his arms around her and held on, feeling her shake with sobs, her tears soaking into his shirt. "You're alive," she gasped. "You're alive. I was sure they'd killed you." "Takes more than a few railroad thugs to kill me." She pulled back her hands, framing his face, her eyes searching his. "You're hurt. Your face, your head. Oh God, what did they do to you?" "Nothing that won't heal." He brushed a tear from her cheek. "I'm fine, I promise." "You're not fine. You can barely stand. Come inside. Sit down before you fall down." She pulled him into her room and pushed him into a chair. Her hands moved over him, checking his wounds, her face tight with worry. Broken ribs. 3. Head injury. Cracked skull. Concussion. But I'm healing. You should be in bed. You shouldn't be here at all. Yes, I should. Kent caught her hands, holding them still. I should be exactly where I am, standing beside you, just like you said in your letter. Fresh tears spilled down her face. You got my letter. I did. Read it about 100 times. I meant every word. I know. He squeezed her hands. I'm here, Khloe. I'm not leaving. Not until this is over. Not until you're safe. She sank to her knees in front of him, still holding his hands, her voice breaking. They're going to destroy me in that courtroom. The railroad's lawyers are brutal. They're going to call me incompetent, mentally deficient. They're going to say my mother was insane. They're going to rip apart everything I am. Let them try. Kent, listen to me. He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. You rode to Helena alone. You filed legal papers alone. You stood up to men who wanted to crush you. You're not the scared girl on that wagon anymore. You're strong, brilliant, brave. And when you walk into that courtroom, they're going to see it. What if I'm not strong enough? You are. And if you forget, I'll be right there reminding you. Khloe's tears came harder now, but they weren't tears of fear anymore. They were tears of relief, of hope, of something deeper she didn't have words for. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for coming. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for saving yourself. You didn't need me to do that. You did it on your own. But I need you now. Kent smiled a real smile that reached his eyes for the first time in 15 years. Then I'm not going anywhere. Someone knocked on the door. Miss May, are you all right? I heard crying. Khloe stood quickly, wiping her eyes. I'm fine, Mrs. Chen. Just good news. Good news that makes you cry. The best kind. Mrs. Chen's footsteps retreated down the hall. Khloe turned back to Kent, her expression shifting. The trial starts in 2 weeks. Judge Warren says the railroad's going to throw everything at us. We need to prepare, need witnesses, need evidence beyond what my mother left. Then we'll get it. How? Kent stood slowly, his mind already working. Reverend Thomas is here. He witnessed your mother's will. Martha Connolly can testify about the railroad's threats. Dutch at the trading post has seen their intimidation tactics, and I can testify about what Fletcher and his men did. They'll say you're biased, that you're lying to protect me. Let them. Truth has a weight to it. A jury will feel it. Khloe looked at him, this mountain man who'd paid $500 to save her, who'd been beaten nearly to death defending her, who'd ridden 3 days with broken ribs to stand beside her, and something inside her shifted. This wasn't just gratitude anymore. This wasn't just respect or friendship or partnership. This was something bigger, deeper, stronger. This was love. She didn't say it, wasn't ready to say it, but she felt it blooming in her chest like spring after a long winter. We're going to win this, she said quietly. Yes, we are. And then, Kent looked at her, his gray eyes steady. Then we figure out what comes next. Together. Together, Khloe repeated, and the word felt like a promise. A promise that neither of them was alone anymore. That whatever came next, they'd face it side by side. Thunderspring, the railroad, the courtroom, the future, all of it, together. The 2 weeks before the trial passed in a blur of preparation and fear. Kent moved into a room down the hall from Khloe at Mrs. Chen's boarding house. His ribs healed slowly, the pain dulling from sharp agony to a constant ache. He pushed through it, spending his days helping Khloe prepare her testimony, his evenings reviewing documents with Reverend Thomas. Judge Warren gave them access to a small office in the courthouse, where they could work without interruption. The walls were lined with law books, and the desk was covered in papers, deeds, letters, testimonies, evidence. "Tell me again about Thunder Spring," Kent said one afternoon. They'd been working for 6 hours straight, and Khloe's voice was hoarse from rehearsing her testimony. "My mother purchased the land in 1867, 40 acres. The deed is registered with the Territorial Land Office. She paid $200 cash. Why did she buy it? Because the spring never runs dry. She knew it would be valuable, knew I'd need something to survive on after she was gone." "And when did the railroad first approach her?" 1870, 3 years after she bought it. They offered her $1,000. "She refused?" "She refused. Said the land was my inheritance, my future. She wouldn't sell." Kent nodded, making notes. "They came back. Every 6 months for 2 years. Each time the offer got higher. 2,000, 3,000, finally 5,000. My mother refused every time." "When did the threats start?" Khloe's hands tightened in her lap. "About a year before she died, men would come to the house, railroad men. They'd stand outside our fence and watch, follow us to church, follow us to town, make sure we knew they were there." "Did they ever threaten you directly?" "Once. A man named Sullivan, he's one of their foremen, cornered me at the general store. Said my mother was being foolish. Said accidents happen to stubborn women. Said I should convince her to sell before something bad happened." Kent's jaw tightened. "Did you tell anyone?" "I told the sheriff. He said there was nothing he could do. Said Sullivan was just making conversation." "The sheriff was bought." "Everyone was bought. That's why my mother made me promise to fight, to never give up. She knew what they were." Kent reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You're doing her proud." "I hope so. But I'm scared, Kent. What if the jury believes the railroad's lawyers? What if they think I'm incompetent? What if—" "Stop." His voice was firm but gentle. "You're not incompetent. You're brilliant. You caught fraud in my ledgers in 5 minutes. You managed your household for 2 years after your mother died. You escaped Silver Creek on your own and made it to Helena. That's not incompetence. That's strength." "But I'm fat, uneducated, a woman. They're going to use all of that against me." "Let them. It'll just prove they're desperate." Kent stood and moved around the desk, kneeling beside her chair. "Listen to me, Khloe. You are more than what they see, more than what they say. You're a landowner, a survivor, a fighter. And when you stand in that courtroom, you're going to show them exactly who you are." Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them back. "What if I freeze? What if I can't speak?" "Then you look at me. I'll be right there, front row, and I'll remind you that you're not alone." She looked down at him, this mountain man with his scarred face and gentle eyes, and felt something crack open in her chest. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "You could have left, could have stayed in the mountains, could have let me fight this alone." "Because you're worth fighting for." "That's not an answer." "Yes, it is." Kent's voice was quiet but certain. "You're worth fighting for, Khloe. Not because of your land or your mother's will or what the railroad wants. Because of who you are. And I'm done letting people I care about face evil alone." The words hung in the air between them. People I care about. Khloe's breath caught. "You care about me? Yes. As what? A responsibility, a rescue. Kent was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. I don't know what to call it. All I know is that when they took you, something inside me broke. And when I thought you might be hurt, or scared, or alone, I couldn't breathe. And when I read your letter, I knew I had to see you again. Had to make sure you were safe, had to stand beside you. He looked up at her, his gray eyes steady. So maybe it's more than caring. Maybe it's something I don't have words for yet. But it's real, and it's not going anywhere. Khloe's tears spilled over. She slid from the chair and wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his neck. Kent held her, careful of his ribs, and let her cry. I care about you too, she whispered against his skin. More than I should. More than makes sense. You saved me. And then you became everything. They stayed like that for a long time, two wounded people holding each other in a dusty office, the weight of the coming trial pressing down on them, but somehow lighter when they were together. Finally, Khloe pulled back and wiped her eyes. We should keep working. We should. But neither of them moved. Kent's hand came up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His thumb traced her cheek, gentle and reverent. You're beautiful, he said quietly. Khloe's breath caught. I'm not. I'm fat and plain, and you're beautiful. His voice was firm. Not because of how you look, because of who you are, because you're brave and kind and brilliant, because you hum when you're happy and you fight even when you're scared. That's beauty, Khloe. Real beauty. The kind that matters. She stared at him, her heart pounding, and for the first time in her life she believed it. Not because she'd changed, because someone finally saw her. The night before the trial, Khloe couldn't sleep. She paced her room at the boarding house, rehearsing her testimony, imagining every terrible question the railroad's lawyers might ask. Is it true your mother was mentally unstable? Is it true you can barely read? Is it true you're too incompetent to manage property? Is it true your father tried to sell you because you were worthless? The questions circled in her mind like vultures. A soft knock on her door made her jump. Khloe? It's me. Kent's voice. She opened the door. He stood in the hallway in his shirt sleeves, his face etched with concern. I heard you pacing. Couldn't sleep either. I'm terrified. I know. What if I fail? What if I lose everything? Kent stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. Then we'll figure out what comes next. But you're not going to fail. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because I've watched you for 2 weeks. I've seen you prepare. I've heard you practice. I've watched you memorize every document, every date, every detail. You're ready. But what if... Stop. He took her hands. No more what ifs, not tonight. Tonight you rest. Tonight you trust that you've done everything you can. And tomorrow you walk into that courtroom and you tell the truth. That's all. Just the truth. Khloe looked up at him, her voice small. Will you stay? Just for a little while. I don't want to be alone. Kent's expression softened. Of course. They sat on the edge of her bed side by side, hands clasped, not speaking. Just breathing. Just being. After a while, Khloe's head dropped to his shoulder. Kent's arm came around her, careful and protective. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For making me believe I can do this. You always could. You just needed someone to remind you. She closed her eyes, feeling his warmth, his strength, his presence. The fear didn't disappear, but it became bearable. They sat like that until dawn light crept through the window. Then Kent stood, pressed a kiss to her forehead, brief, gentle, full of promise, and left to get ready for the trial. The territorial courthouse was packed. Every seat in the gallery filled, people standing along the walls, reporters with notebooks, curious onlookers, railroad officials in expensive suits, and in the front row, Kent McKenna, Reverend Thomas, and Martha Connolly, their faces set with determination. Khloe sat at the plaintiff's table, beside a young lawyer named David Morrison, no relation to the Trading Post owner, who Judge Warren had assigned to her case. Morrison was green, barely 25, but Warren had assured her he was honest and smart. "You'll do fine," Morrison whispered. "Just answer the questions honestly. Don't let them rattle you." Across the aisle, the railroad's legal team sat like a wall of black suits and cold eyes. 6 lawyers. The lead counsel was a man named Charles Blackwell, famous for destroying witnesses on the stand. Judge Warren entered and everyone stood. He was a tall man with iron gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. He surveyed the courtroom with the air of a general surveying a battlefield. "Be seated. We're here for the matter of May versus Northern Pacific Railroad Company. Mr. Morrison, you may present your opening statement." Morrison stood. His voice shook slightly, but grew stronger as he spoke. "Your Honor, this case is simple. Khloe May is the legal owner of 40 acres of land, including Thunder Spring. Her mother, Elizabeth May, purchased the property legally in 1867. When Mrs. May died, the property passed to her daughter according to a legal will properly witnessed and filed. The railroad wants that land. They've tried to buy it, tried to intimidate Miss May into selling it, and when that failed, they've resorted to falsifying claims of mental incompetence and fraud. We will prove that Miss May is the rightful owner, and that the railroad's claims are baseless." He sat down. Blackwell stood. He was older 50s with silver hair and a voice like silk over steel. "Your Honor, the defense will prove that Elizabeth May was mentally unstable when she drafted her will. We have medical testimony that she suffered from delusions and paranoia. We will show that the will itself contains irregularities that call its validity into question. And we will demonstrate that Miss Khloe May lacks the mental capacity to manage property of any kind. This is not about intimidation. This is about protecting a vulnerable young woman from making decisions she's not equipped to make." His words were poison wrapped in concern. The judge's expression didn't change. "Mr. Morrison, call your first witness." The plaintiff calls Reverend Thomas to the stand. Thomas walked to the witness box, his hand on the Bible, his voice steady as he swore to tell the truth. Morrison approached. "Reverend Thomas, how long have you known the May family?" 20 years. I baptized Khloe, married her parents, presided over her mother's funeral." "And you witnessed Elizabeth May's last will and testament?" "I did. 3 days before she died." "Can you describe her mental state at that time?" "She was dying, weak from consumption, but her mind was sharp, clear. She knew exactly what she was doing." "Did she express any concerns about the railroad?" "Yes, she told me they'd been threatening her for years, that they wanted her land and would do anything to get it. She made me promise to protect the deed, to make sure Khloe received her inheritance." Blackwell stood for cross-examination. His smile was predatory. "Reverend Thomas, you say Mrs. May was dying. Weak, in pain. Is it possible her judgment was impaired? Her body was failing. Her mind was not. But she was on laudanum for the pain, wasn't she?" Thomas hesitated. "Yes." "And laudanum causes confusion, delusions, paranoia. Isn't that correct?" "It can. But so it's possible that Mrs. May's claims about threats and intimidation were delusions caused by laudanum?" "No. The threats were real. I witnessed some of them myself." Can you name specific incidents?" Thomas's jaw tightened. "I saw railroad men watching her house, following her to church. Watching isn't threatening, Reverend. Following isn't intimidation. Perhaps Mrs. May was simply paranoid. Perhaps in her drug-addled state, she imagined threats that didn't exist." "That's not what happened." "But you can't prove it." "Can you? You can't prove the railroad threatened her. You can only repeat the paranoid claims of a dying woman high on laudanum." Morrison shot to his feet. "Objection, badgering the witness." Sustained. Warren's voice was sharp. "Mr. Blackwell, ask questions. Don't make speeches." Blackwell smiled. "No further questions." Thomas stepped down, his face flushed with anger. The morning continued with more witnesses. Martha Connolly testified about the railroad's pressure tactics. A land surveyor confirmed the property boundaries. A clerk from the Territorial Land Office verified the deed's authenticity. But Blackwell chipped away at each testimony, planting seeds of doubt, suggesting incompetence, hinting at fraud. By lunch, the jury looked confused. Khloe sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands shaking, watching her case fall apart piece by piece. Kent caught her eye from the gallery and mouthed 2 words: "Stay strong." She nodded, but her heart was breaking. After lunch, Morrison called her to the stand. Khloe stood on trembling legs and walked to the witness box. The courtroom felt massive, every eye on her, every breath loud in her ears. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Then she sat down and looked at Morrison. He smiled reassuringly. "Miss May, please state your full name for the record." "Khloe Elizabeth May." "And you are the plaintiff in this case?" "Yes, sir." "Can you tell the court about Thunder Spring?" Khloe took a breath. "It's a natural spring on my property, 40 acres east of Silver Creek. My mother bought the land in 1867. She paid $200 cash. The deed is registered and legal." "Why did she buy that particular property?" "Because the spring never runs dry. Every other water source in the valley dries up by August. Thunder Spring flows year-round. My mother knew it would be valuable. She wanted me to have something to survive on after she was gone." "And when did the railroad first approach your mother about buying the property?" 1870. They offered $1,000. She refused." "Why?" "Because she wanted me to have it. She said it was my inheritance, my future." Morrison nodded. "The railroad came back." "Many times. The offers kept getting higher. 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. My mother refused every time." "Did they threaten her?" "Yes. Men would watch our house, follow us. One man, Sullivan, cornered me at the general store. He said accidents happen to stubborn women. He said I should convince my mother to sell." "Did you report this to the sheriff?" "Yes. He said there was nothing he could do." Morrison paused, letting that sink in. "Miss May, the defense claims you're mentally incompetent, that you lack the capacity to manage property. What do you say to that?" Khloe's hands tightened in her lap. "I say they're wrong. After my mother died, I managed our household for 2 years. I kept the books, paid the bills, grew food, kept us from starving. I taught myself property law so I'd know my rights. I'm not incompetent. I'm just a woman. And they think that's the same thing." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Morrison smiled. "No further questions." Blackwell stood slowly like a snake uncoiling. He walked toward Khloe, his eyes cold and calculating. "Miss May, you say you managed your household after your mother died. But isn't it true that your father was the head of household, that you were merely a servant?" "I was his daughter. And after my mother died, I did all the work." "Work? You mean cooking and cleaning tasks any simple-minded girl can do." "I also kept the financial records, managed the property taxes, negotiated with suppliers." "Interesting. Can you read, Miss May?" "Yes." "Really? What level of education do you have?" "My mother taught me at home. I can read, write, and do mathematics." "Can you—" "Let me test that." Blackwell picked up a law book and flipped it open. "Read this passage aloud." Khloe took the book. Her hands shook, but her voice stayed steady as she read a complex paragraph about property rights. When she finished, Blackwell's smile tightened. "Very good. Now tell me, Miss May, is it true your father tried to sell you at auction?" The courtroom gasped. Khloe's face went white. Morrison jumped up. "Objection, relevance." "It goes to the witness's credibility, Your Honor, her family situation, her mental state." Warren frowned. "I'll allow it, but tread carefully, Mr. Blackwell." Blackwell turned back to Khloe. Well, did your father try to sell you? Yes. Her voice was barely a whisper. Speak up, please. Yes. He tried to sell me. Why would a father sell his own daughter? Because he was drunk and desperate, and he owed money to the railroad. Owed money to the railroad? You mean your family had debts to my clients? Yes, my father gambled. The railroad offered to clear his debts if he signed over my land. He tried to make me sign. When I refused, he decided to sell me instead. And someone bought you, didn't they? A man named Kent McKenna. Khloe's eyes found Kent in the gallery. He nodded, his expression steady. Yes, he bought me. For how much? $500. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Blackwell's smile widened. $500. A fortune. Why would a man pay that much for someone like you unless he wanted something in return? Morrison shot up. Objection. The witness is not on trial for... Your Honor, this goes to her judgment, her ability to make sound decisions. Warren's eyes were hard. Get to your point, Mr. Blackwell. Miss May, what did Mr. McKenna want in exchange for that $500? Khloe's voice was strong now. Clear. Nothing. Nothing. A man pays $500 and wants nothing. He wanted to save me. He gave me a room with a lock, food, safety. He asked for nothing in return. He treated me with respect when nobody else would. How convenient. And now he's here supporting your claim, almost like he has a financial interest in your property. He doesn't want my property. He wants me to be free. Or perhaps he wants to control you, to manipulate you, to use your property for his own gain. Khloe's voice rose, anger cutting through fear. Kent McKenna is the only person who saw me as a human being, not livestock, not property, not something to use. He risked his life to protect me. The railroad's men beat him nearly to death. And he's still here, still fighting. Not for my land, for me. Because he believes I deserve dignity. And if you can't see the difference between that and what the railroad's doing, then you're blind. The courtroom fell silent. Blackwell's smile faltered. Warren leaned forward, his eyes on Khloe. Continue, Miss May. My mother died protecting this land. She knew the railroad would come after me. She prepared everything, the deed, the will, the documents. She made me promise to fight, to never give up. Because this isn't just about water rights or property lines. It's about whether a woman can own something, whether she can say no to powerful men, whether she deserves respect. Khloe's voice cracked, but she pushed through. I'm not incompetent. I'm not mentally deficient. I'm just someone who refuses to be bullied. And if that makes me difficult, if that makes me troublesome, then so be it. But this land is mine. My mother bought it legally. She left it to me legally. And no amount of expensive lawyers or fake medical testimony will change that. The silence was deafening. Then someone in the gallery started clapping. Martha Connolly. Then Thomas joined her. Then Kent, his hands coming together in steady, thunderous applause. Then others, one by one, until half the courtroom was applauding and Warren was banging his gavel. Order, order in this court. The applause died slowly, reluctantly. Blackwell's face was red. No further questions. Khloe stepped down from the witness box, her legs shaking, and returned to her seat. Morrison squeezed her shoulder. That was perfect. But Khloe barely heard him. She was looking at Kent, whose eyes were shining with something that looked like pride, like love. And for the first time since the trial started, she thought maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. The courtroom remained tense through the afternoon as Blackwell paraded his witnesses to the stand. A doctor who'd never met Elizabeth May testified that her symptoms suggested mental instability. A handwriting expert claimed irregularities in the will's signatures. A property assessor argued that Khloe couldn't possibly understand the complexities of land management. Morrison fought back hard, dismantling each testimony with sharp questions and documented evidence. But the damage lingered in the air, like smoke, clouding the jury's faces with doubt. By the time Judge Warren adjourned for the day, exhaustion had settled over everyone like a heavy blanket. Khloe walked out of the courthouse between Kent and Reverend Thomas, her body numb, her mind spinning. "You did well today," Thomas said gently. "That speech at the end, your mother would have been proud." "But is it enough?" Khloe's voice was hollow. "Did you see the jury? They're not sure. Blackwell planted enough doubt." Kent's hand found hers warm and steady. "The trial's not over. Tomorrow Morrison presents the rebuttal case. We've still got witnesses who'll counter their lies. And if it's not enough, then we appeal. We fight at the federal level. We don't stop until we win." They walked in silence back to Mrs. Chen's boarding house. The sun was setting, painting Helena's streets gold and red. People passed them on the sidewalks, going about their ordinary lives, unaware that Khloe's entire world hung in the balance. Inside the boarding house, Mrs. Chen met them with steaming bowls of soup and knowing eyes. "Eat. You need strength for tomorrow." They ate in the small dining room, the three of them and Martha Connolly, who'd joined them after the trial. The conversation was quiet, subdued, everyone too drained for optimism. After dinner, Kent walked Khloe to her room. They stood in the hallway, neither wanting to say goodnight, both needing the comfort of the other's presence. "I keep thinking about what Blackwell said," Khloe finally whispered. "About you wanting something in return. About you manipulating me." Kent's jaw tightened. "You know that's not true." "I do. But what if the jury believes it? What if they think I'm just a foolish girl who fell for a mountain man's scheme? Then they're wrong, and we'll prove it." Kent took her hands. "Khloe, I need you to hear something. I don't want your land. I don't want your property. I never did. What I want—" He stopped struggling for words. "What I want is to see you free, to see you safe, to see you become everything you're meant to be. That's all. That's everything." Tears slipped down her cheeks. Why do you care so much?" "Because somewhere along the way between that auction and this moment you stopped being a rescue and became the reason I wake up in the morning. You became hope, purpose, home." His voice roughened. "You became everything I didn't know I was looking for." Khloe's breath caught. "Kent, I love you." The words came out raw, unpolished, true. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you caught the fraud in my ledgers. Maybe when you hummed hymns while cooking. Maybe the moment you stood on that wagon looking terrified, and I knew I'd do anything to save you. But it happened. And it's real, and I need you to know that before tomorrow, before whatever happens happens." She stared at him, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "I love you too," she whispered. "I've been so scared to say it. Scared it was wrong or too soon, or just gratitude disguised as something else. But it's not. It's love. Real love. The kind my mother used to talk about. The kind that sees the worst parts of you and chooses you anyway." Kent pulled her into his arms, careful of his still healing ribs, and held her like she was something precious, something worth protecting, something worth everything. They stood like that until Mrs. Chen cleared her throat from down the hallway. "It's late. You both need sleep. Tomorrow is an important day." Kent pressed a kiss to Khloe's forehead, lingering full of promise. "We're going to win this. Together." "Together," she echoed. And this time the word felt like armor. The second day of trial opened with Morrison calling Kent to the stand. Kent walked to the witness box, his movements still careful from his injuries, and swore to tell the truth. His gray eyes swept the courtroom before settling on Morrison. "Mr. McKenna, please tell the court how you came to meet Khloe May." Kent's voice was steady. "I was in Silver Creek for supplies. Heard a commotion at Murphy's saloon. Went to investigate and found a crowd gathered around a wagon. Luther May was auctioning his daughter like livestock." "What did you do?" "I stopped it. Paid $500 to take her away from that situation." "Why?" Kent's eyes found Khloe's. "Because nobody should be sold. Not ever." Were you expecting anything in return? No, I gave her a room with a lock on the inside. Her own space, her own privacy. Told her she could stay or leave as she chose. I wanted her safe, nothing else. Morrison nodded. What happened after Miss May came to your cabin? She worked if she wanted to. Cooked, mended clothes. Helped me understand I was being cheated in my trading. She's brilliant with numbers. Within a week, she'd found fraud in my ledgers going back 3 years. And you developed feelings for her? Yes, but I didn't act on them. I respected her space, her choices. I wanted her to be free, not obligated. Morrison paused. Mr. McKenna, the railroad's men attacked you. Can you describe what happened? Kent's expression hardened. 3 men ambushed my cabin. Fletcher Cord and a third man I didn't know. They beat me unconscious. Broke 3 ribs. Cracked my skull. When I came to, Khloe was gone. They'd taken her. Why do you think they attacked you? Because I was protecting her. Because I stood between them and what they wanted. And what did they want? Her land, her silence, her submission. Kent's voice was iron. They wanted to break her so she'd sign over Thunder Spring. And when that didn't work, they tried to break me. Morrison let that settle over the courtroom. No further questions. Blackwell stood for cross-examination, his smile sharp. Mr. McKenna, you're a trapper, a mountain man. You live alone. Is that correct? Yes. Why? Because I prefer solitude. Or because you have difficulty with social interactions, perhaps mental instabilities from your time in the war. Morrison shot up. Objection. Relevance. Goes to the witness's credibility, Your Honor. Warren frowned. I'll allow it, but be brief. Blackwell turned back to Kent. Did you serve in the Civil War? Yes, Union Army, 4 years. And you saw combat? Yes. Witnessed violence, death trauma, all of it. And after the war you fled to the mountains, away from people, away from civilization. Would you say you have difficulty trusting others? Kent's voice was measured. I'd say I'm selective about who I trust, and I'm smart enough not to trust people who lie. Such as the railroad? Such as anyone who uses violence and intimidation to get what they want. Blackwell's smile tightened. Mr. McKenna, isn't it true that you have a financial interest in Miss May's property, that if she wins this case you stand to benefit? No. No. You're telling this court that you've invested time, money, and risked your life for a woman you have no financial connection to. I'm telling this court I invested in a human being's freedom. That's worth more than money. How noble. But let's be honest, Mr. McKenna. You paid $500 for Miss May. That's a significant investment. Don't you expect some return? Kent's eyes went cold. I expect her to live her life on her own terms. I expect her to be free from men like you who think money can buy people. I expect her to own what's rightfully hers. That's my return. Her freedom. Or perhaps her gratitude, her affection, perhaps even her hand in marriage, which would give you legal access to her property. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Morrison was on his feet. Objection, speculation, and harassment. Warren banged his gavel. Sustained. Mr. Blackwell, unless you have actual evidence of impropriety, move on. Blackwell smiled coldly. No further questions. Kent stepped down, his face hard, and returned to his seat in the gallery. Khloe caught his eye and mouthed 2 words. Thank you. The morning continued with more witnesses. Morrison called the Apache boy Khloe had taught to read. The boy, now 17, testified that Khloe had been kind and patient, teaching him letters when no one else would, proving her capability and compassion. He called Sarah Bridger, the widow who'd saved Kent's life. Sarah testified to finding Kent beaten nearly to death, to nursing him back from the edge, to his desperate need to reach Helena to help Khloe. That man loved that girl, Sarah said bluntly. Not her property, her. And anyone who can't see the difference is a fool. The gallery murmured approval. By noon, Morrison had built a solid counter case. But Blackwell still had one final witness. After lunch, he called Luther May to the stand. Khloe's breath stopped. Her father shuffled to the witness box, thinner than she remembered, his face bloated from drink, his hands shaking. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Blackwell approached him gently, like a father confessor. "Mr. May, you're Khloe May's father. Is that correct?" "Yes." Luther's voice was hoarse. "Can you describe your daughter's mental state over the past few years?" Luther shifted uncomfortably. She's not right. Hasn't been since her mother died. Not right how? Gets confused. Forgets things. Has wild ideas about people threatening her. Paranoid like her mother." Khloe's hands clenched into fists. "And you tried to help her, to protect her?" "I did, but she wouldn't listen. Wouldn't sign over the land so we could pay our debts. Insisted on keeping property she can't manage." "So you made the difficult decision to find her a husband. Someone who could care for her." Luther nodded eagerly. "Yes, that's all I was trying to do. Find someone to take care of her. Then that mountain man interfered." "Interfered how?" "Took her. Kept her isolated. Probably filling her head with lies about me, about the railroad. That's why she's fighting this. Because she's been manipulated." Blackwell nodded sympathetically. "Thank you, Mr. May. No further questions." Morrison stood for cross-examination, his young face set with righteous anger. "Mr. May, you said you were trying to find your daughter a husband. Is that what you call selling her at auction?" Luther's face reddened. I was trying to help. By letting strangers bid on her like livestock. She needed someone to take care of her. Or you needed money for whiskey." Morrison's voice was sharp. "Isn't it true that you owed the railroad money from gambling?" I had some debts." $5,000 in debts, isn't that correct?" Luther swallowed hard. "Around that. And the railroad offered to clear those debts if you signed over your daughter's property." "They made an offer, yes. But you couldn't sign it because you don't own the property. Your daughter does. So you tried to force her to sign. I tried to make her see reason. And when she refused, you decided to sell her. To auction her off so she'd be gone, and you could claim the property. No, I would never. You stood on a wagon in front of 30 witnesses and sold your daughter for $500. How is that not selling her?" Luther's face crumpled. "I was drunk. I wasn't thinking straight. I thought someone decent would take her. Would give her a better life. Or you thought you'd get money to pay your gambling debts." Morrison's voice dripped with contempt. "Mr. May, do you love your daughter?" The question hung in the air. Luther's mouth opened, closed. His eyes finally found Khloe's across the courtroom. She stared back, her face a mask of pain and anger. Luther's voice cracked. "I don't know anymore." The courtroom fell silent. "No further questions," Morrison said quietly. Luther stumbled from the witness stand, his face buried in his hands. He hurried out of the courtroom without looking back. Khloe watched him go, tears streaming down her face. Not from sadness, from relief. From the realization that she was finally truly free from him. Judge Warren called for closing arguments. Blackwell went first, his voice smooth and persuasive. He painted Khloe as a troubled young woman, manipulated by a damaged war veteran, unable to manage her own affairs, needing protection from herself. Then Morrison stood. He was young, inexperienced, but his voice rang with conviction. This case isn't about mental competence. It's about power. About a railroad company that wants land and will destroy anyone who stands in their way. They've tried to buy it. They've tried to intimidate. They've tried violence. And when all that failed, they've tried to use the law itself as a weapon. He turned to face the jury. Khloe May is not incompetent. She's educated, intelligent, capable. She managed a household. She taught a child to read. She kept financial records. She escaped captivity and navigated a legal system designed to work against women. That's not incompetence. That's extraordinary strength. Morrison pointed at the railroad's table. They want you to believe she's too weak to own property, too foolish to make decisions, too damaged to deserve respect. But look at what she's survived. Look at what she's overcome. She's stronger than any of us. He walked back to the plaintiff's table and put his hand on Khloe's shoulder. The question before you is simple. Does Khloe May have the right to own what her mother left her? Does she have the right to say no to powerful men? Does she have the right to dignity? He paused. I believe she does, and I trust that you will too. He sat down. Warren looked at the jury. Gentlemen, you've heard the testimony. You've seen the evidence. Now you must decide. Does Khloe May have the legal right to her property, or does the railroad's claim have merit? You'll deliberate and return with your verdict. The jury filed out. Khloe sat frozen, her heart pounding. Kent moved from the gallery to sit beside her, taking her hand. Now we wait, he said quietly. The wait was agony. 1 hour became 2. 2 became 3. The sun moved across the sky. Shadows lengthened. Khloe paced the hallway outside the courtroom, unable to sit, unable to breathe properly. Kent stayed beside her, a solid presence, his hand occasionally touching her back, reminding her she wasn't alone. Thomas and Martha prayed in a corner. Morrison reviewed his notes, second-guessing every word. Mrs. Chen brought tea that nobody drank. As the 4th hour approached, the bailiff emerged. They're coming back. Khloe's knees nearly gave out. Kent caught her elbow, steadying her. Breathe, he whispered. Whatever happens, breathe. They filed back into the courtroom. The jury returned to their seats, their faces unreadable. Judge Warren entered and settled behind his bench. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman stood. He was an older man, a rancher weathered and stern. He held a piece of paper in his calloused hands. We have your honor. Please read it. The foreman cleared his throat. The courtroom held its collective breath. In the matter of May versus Northern Pacific Railroad Company, we find in favor of the plaintiff, Khloe May. Her ownership of the property known as Thunder Spring is legal and binding. The railroad's claims of fraud and mental incompetence are without merit. The courtroom exploded. Cheers erupted from the gallery. Martha sobbed with joy. Thomas shouted, Hallelujah! Morrison pumped his fist in the air. Khloe stood frozen, unable to process the words. Kent pulled her into his arms, laughing, his eyes bright with tears. You won. You actually won. I won, she repeated, dazed. Then louder, I won. Judge Warren banged his gavel, trying to restore order, but he was smiling. The verdict stands. Miss May retains full ownership of her property. The railroad's claims are dismissed with prejudice. This court is adjourned. Blackwell and his team gathered their papers in furious silence and stormed from the courtroom. The railroad officials followed, their faces dark with rage and defeat. But Khloe barely noticed. She was surrounded by people hugging her, congratulating her, celebrating her victory. Strangers shook her hand. Women told her she was brave. Men said she'd changed things. Through it all, Kent stayed beside her, his hand on her back, his presence steady and sure. When the crowd finally thinned and they stepped outside into the evening air, Khloe stopped on the courthouse steps and looked at the city spread before her. Helena. The place that had seemed so foreign and frightening 2 weeks ago. Now it felt like the place where everything had changed, where she'd found her voice, her strength, her future. What happens now? She asked quietly. Kent stood beside her, his shoulder touching hers. Now you go home, to Thunder Spring, to your land. And you. He turned to face her, his gray eyes serious. That depends on you. On me. You're free now, Khloe. Truly free. Free from your father, from the railroad, from anyone who wants to control you. You can do anything, go anywhere, be anyone. He took her hands. So the question is, what do you want? Khloe looked at him. This man who'd saved her, protected her, loved her, and asked for nothing in return. This man who'd shown her what real strength looked like, what real love looked like. "I want to go home," she said. "To Thunder Spring. To build a life there. Alone." She smiled, tears streaming down her face. "No, not alone. Never alone again. I want you there. If you'll come. If you'll help me build something worth having." Kent's smile was like sunrise after a long night. "I'll come. I'll help you build. I'll stand beside you for as long as you'll have me." "Forever then." Forever sounds about right. He kissed her there on the courthouse steps, in front of half of Helena. And Khloe kissed him back, with all the love and hope and strength she'd discovered inside herself. When they finally pulled apart, Reverend Thomas was grinning. "I suppose you'll be wanting me to perform a wedding sometime soon." Kent looked at Khloe. "What do you say? Want to make an honest man out of a mountain trapper? Want to make an honest woman out of a girl who was auctioned like livestock?" They both laughed, and it felt like freedom. 3 months later, Khloe stood at Thunder Spring, watching the water flow clear and cold from the ground, the sunlight making it sparkle like liquid diamond. The land around it was beginning to transform. Kent had built a small house near the spring, simple but solid. They'd planted a garden, fixed the fences, made it a home. The railroad had appealed the verdict twice. Lost both times. Finally, they'd given up and rerouted their line north, finding water elsewhere at twice the cost. The story had spread through the territory. The fat girl who beat the railroad. The mountain man who paid $500 to save her. The love story that changed everything. People came to visit sometimes. To see the spring. To meet the woman who'd stood up to power and won. Khloe welcomed them with grace and hospitality, no longer ashamed of her body, no longer afraid of judgment. She'd learned something important in that courtroom. She'd learned that her worth wasn't determined by her weight, or her beauty, or how others saw her. Her worth was inherent, undeniable, God-given, and she'd learned that real love didn't try to possess or control. It liberated. It empowered. It saw you at your worst and chose you anyway. Kent emerged from the house carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one and stood beside her looking at the spring. "Thomas is coming tomorrow to finalize the deed transfer." "Transfer? I'm adding my name, making us legal co-owners, equal partners." Khloe looked at him surprised. "You don't have to do that." "I know, but I want to. This is our land now, our future. We build it together, or not at all." She leaned against him, feeling his warmth, his strength, his love. "My mother would have liked you," she said softly. "Yeah." She always said the best men are the ones who see women as equals, who protect without possessing, who love without demanding. Khloe looked up at him. "You're that kind of man." Kent kissed her forehead. "And you're the kind of woman who makes a man want to be better, stronger, braver." They stood together watching the spring, watching their land, watching their future unfold before them. The town of Silver Creek had changed too. Morrison had filed charges against the corrupt sheriff and judge. Federal marshals had come through cleaning house, restoring law. Fletcher and Cord had been sentenced to 10 years for kidnapping and assault. Luther May had disappeared, last seen heading west with nothing but the clothes on his back and the weight of his shame. Martha Connolly had started a women's property rights organization. Sarah Bridger had moved closer, becoming Khloe's mentor and friend. The Apache boy Khloe had taught now worked at the Territorial Land Office, helping other families protect their claims. Change rippled outward like water from a stone. All because one girl refused to be sold. One man refused to walk past suffering. One love refused to accept the world as it was and insisted on making it better. As the sun set over Thunder Spring, Kent pulled Khloe into his arms. "I love you," he said, "every day more than the last. I love you too, for seeing me when I was invisible, for standing beside me when I was afraid, for showing me what I was worth." You always had worth. I just had the privilege of witnessing it." They kissed as the sky turned gold and red and purple, the spring singing its eternal song, the land solid beneath their feet, the future bright with possibility. Khloe May had been sold for $500. But she'd bought her freedom with courage, her dignity with strength, and her future with love. And in the end, that made her priceless.